Today on the Catalog Collector, we will be taking a look at the only catalog I have with a section specifically designed for teaching you where to buy that watch, with high quality photos. Of course, first we look at the physical characteristics. This catalog came quickly and with a handwritten note, which I really appreciate. I think it's the first catalog that came with a handwritten note, so it was kind of a shock that they'll write you a handwritten note. And the catalog itself, it has, well, it's this classic catalog shape of long and short. It's soft cover with a dark blue matte textured cover. The title is in this sort of recessed font that it isn't metallic, but it's sort of this creamy white, this beige, slightly beige color. We get to the pages, which have this sort of glossy. I would say this is one of those catalogs that have a glossy texture. This isn't the luster of a Lange catalog. This is a little bit more shiny and smooth. And the pages are a little bit thinner than the Lange catalog, but there certainly is enough of them. The ink is good, the photos are good. Now let's see if the content is any good. We start with the contents and the history of Bremont, which is a really nice, moving, bit sad, but it's a good story. Like I said before, a good story really does account for a lot of whether a brand succeeds or not. It is a good, though sad, story, and shows how two brothers created Bremont. Now, moving on, there's quite a few pages on sort of the, I don't know, background, not really background of Bremont, but Bremont's vision and who they are and what they mean and all that. So they claim to be a British watch company and show the many British innovations in watchmaking. And reading this, really a lot of stuff comes from Britain. The balance spring, minute hand, lever escapement. That makes me wonder why it's called the Swiss lever escapement, but I'd have to look that up and I'm too lazy to do that. Center seconds, chronograph, automatic winding. It's funny that they didn't include the most modern innovation in British watchmaking, being George Daniels's coaxial escapement, but that could be because they don't use that in their own watches. Now, it is true that a lot of watchmaking was done in Britain, and watchmaking for a long time wasn't based in Switzerland, or at least the highest end pieces didn't come from Switzerland. Of course, all these British inventors probably hail from Scotland, but that's a whole nother topic. And now we have the three pillars of Bremont watchmaking. One, British engineering, that we already talked about. They have some, well, one page about them being the official timekeeper of the Royal Regatta. Well, I guess they couldn't put that in the adventure pillar. The second pillar is aviation and military. And the third pillar, adventure. And we go through some of these other things. Bremont parts manufacturing facility and their technology. the AMRC with Boeing. So, very British, aren't they? Partnering with Boeing is something truly British. So you have Bremont technology and their spectacular movement finishing. Well, I wouldn't call it finished and decorated to the highest possible specification. I would just say that it's great finishing, but it is not bad finishing. It is, well, from what I can see, it is machine finishing, but it's not terrible machine finishing. So Bremont focuses a bit on their toughness, the toughness of their watches, and that they can withstand so many things. So one thing I do like, one thing they advertise that I haven't seen before is that their cases are made of hardened steel with BEBE BEBE 2000 technology. I do like the propeller. In this photo you can see their crown signature, and I do like that propeller look. We move on to the Bremont testing. The testing with Martin Baker, a company that produces ejection seats for aircraft. I am impressed that the watches can withstand the 30 Gs of force that occur in an ejection seat. After a few more pages about their partnerships and who they sponsor, we get to another page. Here. The collection. Now, several of these ranges, they call them ranges, from the collection are based on partnerships with other companies or organizations, institutions maybe, which is something. The first watch in this armed forces range is, well, something not really interesting. And then that's, well, the only watch in the armed forces range. Now the first watch in the ALT1 range is their ALT1C Classic, their classic chronograph. And I really do like this chronograph. Especially the blue dialed version with the blue hands and the white subdials. I think it just looks great. I love the font, I love the style of hands, the indices, the sort of clean, open design that is pretty characteristic of Bremont in general. Gives this watch a really nice look. The next range of watches is the Supermarine range, which starts with the dive watches. And are they all dive watches? Yes, they're all dive watches. All of these dive watches I really like, especially the first one with the white dial. I usually don't like dive watches that much. I don't like Mercedes hands. Sorry, Rolex. I don't like Mercedes hands. And I think these, I guess, sort of cathedral hands really look nice. I do like the open sort of look of a Bremont dive watch. And this is a unique dive watch. It isn't just a Submariner homage. I do like the red triangle up top of this S300, and it does kind of have aspects of a Submariner, especially that Supermarine 300 meters, 980 feet. I mean, Supermarine and Submariner from a distance, if you don't have great eyes, they could look the same. They both start with an S. They both have, well, Supermarine, Submariner. It's kind of similar, but, well, Supermarine comes from, and this is what I like about their naming of the S300, it doesn't just mean 300 meters of water resistance, which already I like, but the Bremont Supermarine Type 300, the name of the collection, Supermarine, and the watch comes from the Type 300 prototype aircraft, the prototype Spitfire. And who's the company that produced the Spitfire? Supermarine. I don't know why that has anything to do with a dive watch, but I like it. And it brings me to another point, that these dive watches sort of have this pilot watch look about them, this sort of openness and legibility. A dive watch is supposed to have great legibility, but so is a pilot watch. And I personally gravitate more towards pilot watches for their design. And what I think Bremont did is basically take some of that style from a pilot watch and put it into a dive watch, which, well, makes me want to have a dive watch, especially this dive watch. And the S2000 with 2,000 meters of water resistance, with a bezel insert that I have never seen before. I mean, we have aluminum, we have ceramic. I really love ceramic bezels, especially. One thing I do like about the Rolex Submariner with the ceramic bezels is that they cut out the Arabic numerals, and I do like the look of that. This bezel is a curved sapphire bezel, which makes it look thinner and vintage, though I don't think any vintage watches had a sapphire bezel insert. Something about it is just special. And of course it has 2,000 meters of water resistance, which I do like, which is more than anyone will ever need, but it's nice to say you have a watch with 2,000 meters of water resistance when the guy next to you only has 200. And you both only go diving in it never. And the MB, the Martin Baker range. Of course, we have the Bremont MB1, only available to those who have ejected using an MB ejection seat. And of course, this watch is not something you would want, but I do like that red case. I do think that because of the colored barrel, this watch is any good in the first place. Without that colored barrel, it would be sort of, well, a little boring for what it is. A watch themed to an ejection seat. But with that colored barrel, it's not a watch I would personally get, but I can understand. But I do like the design, and I can appreciate the effort that was put into making it. Now, one other thing about the MB range is that these are the watches that can withstand the 30 Gs of force. And how can they do that? And they do that with what they call a suspended inner case, which houses the actual movement. Now, I wouldn't use the word suspended, which has this connotation of, well, being suspended. This is just, well, suspended in a rubber ring, which is probably far better for the 30 Gs of force that it goes through in testing, but I wouldn't call it suspended when it's just a rubber ring. And before we get to the solo range, which is next, I want to just mention that they keep saying that their movements are so beautiful in this catalog, but they never really seem to show pictures of them. Only in a couple rare places do they actually show the movement. And then it's basically a big rotor anyway. They do have nice rotors though. And now the solo range is more of a classic looking pilot watch. And finally we have a large photo of a movement. Might be the only one. And like I said, it's a wonderful rotor. Too bad we can't see anything else because it's out of focus. And we get to the Boeing line, which again, is it British? But this Model 1, the GMT, is one of the few GMTs that I actually like. Especially because that GMT hand, you only have that yellow on the second half of the hand and the tip, which sort of hides it a little, and then you have that recessed texture to it that I find pretty nice. And like I said, it's one of the few GMTs that I would consider getting. One little detail that I almost missed and really found surprising was the second hand. It has this beautifully shaped tip that's rimmed in blue, but only on one side. The right side is cut off. Another thing that's nice about the Boeing series is the crown, which is one thing I really like about Bremont's special edition models. I do like that the different crown designs. In this case, it's sort of this thick, twisted texture. And next, Jags. This is, of course, one of my favorite series, the second only to what comes afterwards. And it really shows that Bremont watches on their own, without any partnerships or anything, are great. But when they do a partnership and they do it good, it takes a regular Bremont watch, which is sort of this clean plate, and adds this spice to it that really makes it eye-catching. And we finally have this is the second, but we finally have an in-focus close-up movement photo. The Mark 1, Mark 2, and Mark 3. 3 different watches on one page. I see a chronograph. I see something that isn't a chronograph. That's interesting. 43 millimeters, so a little bit too big. Very nice crown with the tire treads. And the rotor is utterly spectacular, and I think the movement looks really good, has great finishing. Now the next watch, the D-Type limited edition. This dial design is utterly spectacular. They took the chronograph that they have and basically added the Jaguar logo onto it, and that of course makes it better. One thing I don't like about the D-Type, one thing that is a deal breaker for me, is the movement finishing. Why, on their limited edition, do they have worse finishing than on the regular? On the regular, they have, in the English stripes, I guess. They have a striped finish. The steering wheel rotor has a cap with this wonderful, it says E-Type logo. The D-Type does not have that cover, and it has something far worse. It does not have stripes. What do they do instead? Circular graining. Why did they make the limited edition movement worse than the regular? That is something I won't understand ever. And we finally get to the limited editions. Thought we just moved on from the D-Type limited edition. I don't know why the next section is called limited edition, but that's what they call it. And we have my favorite watch of all the Bremont watches, the Bremont Supersonic. But the white dial and the blue hands is something spectacular. I love the finishing on the dial. It's just so clean and airy and light, but it has so much detail. The little pips next to the Arabic numbers are slightly elongated and have this rim around them with, I guess, like superluminova or something, lume on them. I even love the power reserve indicator. It's just so nice. One of my favorite finishes on here is that sub-second dial with the texture on the inner part and the thin recessed second markers. And of course, it's themed to Concorde, my favorite passenger jet and one of my favorite planes of all time. What the Concorde was and what it represented in supersonic travel, and this watch has part of a Concorde in it around the movement in this little ring. So the Bremont Supersonic incorporates a ring of aluminum from Alpha Bravo, Heathrow's last remaining Concorde. What's also fantastic is the movement. Here, though they don't show it blown up here, they show it blown up somewhere else. But though the finishing is of course machine finished and not the beautiful hand finishing that you get from higher end brands, it has the silhouette of a Concorde in the watch movement. And it's not just nicely done, but it's spectacularly done. it just makes me smile every time I see it. The one negative I would say is the crown, which unfortunately for some reason isn't as special as the Jaguar crown or the Boeing crown, but it really doesn't matter when you have a piece of Concorde in the watch. And there you have some other stuff, some other photos, something about Battle of Great Britain, other watch. This is some more interesting watches. Of course, buying Bremont section, and that's the end of the catalog. So now, what's my personal opinion of Bremont? Bremont is one of the few companies with regular sort of off-the-shelf movements that I really like. That some of my favorites from Bremont are the chronograph, the dive, and of course my favorite has to be the Concorde. And my thoughts on what they did, like I said, it's a modern interpretation of a pilot's watch that's clean and simple, and you know, there is something else, a different design style that is also supposed to be clean and simple, and that light airiness that Bremont has. It's called Bauhaus, one of my least favorite design languages ever created. For some reason, I don't like Bauhaus. I don't know why I don't like Bauhaus. I don't like Bauhaus. I like Bremont. If Bauhaus was more like Bremont, I might like it more. So now my verdict. If you like pilot's watches, if you like the design, the style, the purpose, but don't want to have a real pilot watch, and are looking for something perhaps a bit dressier, Bremont is the perfect option for you. The catalog is quite nice and even shows you some high quality photos of their boutiques. Wish they did that with their movements. Thanks for watching the video to the end. If you liked it, please subscribe and like the video. Perhaps consider supporting me on Patreon. Any support would be greatly appreciated. I will be coming out with catalog collectors once a week for the foreseeable future. Of course, until I run out of catalogs. We'll see what happens then. See you in the next one.